Well, joining us on this very conversation is activist Griselda Dudumasha. We also have MEC Sizakele Nkosi Malobane. She's the MEC for Community Safety. She joins us via phone line. The initial response, I mean, I could hear you as we're listening to Sandile Mantsoe's legal representative, particularly the part where he talks about this is overboard.
Yeah.
If you're going to talk about a matter stemming from a love affair, death is death. What's your take?
And it is exactly that. Death is death. But the unfortunate reality with all this is it goes back to family values. Where do these boys come from? Who's raising them? And I did a program with Department of Higher Education, and one of the campaigns was about abuse within higher education institution. And I remember walking away from that dialogue feeling helpless, because 32% of young girls, it's actually 62% of young girls were saying they don't feel safe in the hands of their male counterparts. And these are supposed to be their colleagues, their friends, their brothers, but they don't feel safe. And that says to me there's something we're missing within how we socialize our society. Because when I listen to this case, this child believed that I pay for your weave, I pay for your car, and therefore you're my property. And at the same time, we have campaigns that are instilling a sense of self-worth amongst our girls. And when you have a sense of self-worth, you refuse to be a commodity. You refuse to be somebody's possession. And now, how do we then bridge that confusing dialogue between him and her? Where he believes that I own you, you are my property because I do things for you. It is from the payment of lobola that women are portrayed by society as these goods that are consumed.
Some sort of a commodity.
So we need to get to a place where some of our cultural practices, we go that deep, because it's all good and well. I mean, I'm listening to this man. He's calling it a passion crime. Bottom line is somebody's child was murdered, and gruesomely so. And how do we then even look at the psyche of this young man and understand what is his narrative? Why did he opt for, to get into a place your loved one has died and you choose to protect yourself? There's narcissism in there.
It remains the biggest question. That at that point, you would expect that if it is a crime of passion,
absolutely,
the minute you realize that your lover has died, or if you found her dead, the last thing you want to do, as I said earlier, is exonerate yourself from that crime. You try to resuscitate her or something of that nature.
Or call for help. But rather you believe that, let me go bury her in case they blame it on me. Why would they blame it on you? What do you know that we don't know that makes you believe that we'll blame it on you?
Perhaps just to rope in the MEC here. MEC, thank you very much for your time. Your take on the sentencing today? MEC, perhaps just to repeat the question, your take on today's sentencing and perhaps the trial itself.
Hello?
Hello, MEC, can you hear me?
I think you're speaking to the wrong person. I'm not MEC.
Apologies, we'll try to get back the MEC for community safety. But back to you, Griselda. Femicide itself. It seems that Karabo Mukwena's murder shone the light on the struggles of women. But it's still unfortunate that it took just something or an incident in 2017 for many to now focus on women's struggle. But people have been dying for the longest time.
But, I mean, for me, what's even more tragic is whilst we're focusing on this case, there's another young child in KZN who was gunned down, and we all call that a passion crime. And this young man, as he's taken down to the cells, he makes a gesture of that, gun, I will shoot. And for me, it just says the psyche of our young men. Why is it that they would resort to crime? Why is it that they are so violent? It's in, being satisfied about service level deliveries. There's just so much more that we need to intensify in having conversations. We've had so many conversations with our young girls. It's time we focus on the young man. What is his narrative? What informs the decisions that he makes? It is in us as women as well, how we raise our daughters. When she comes with things that she can afford, what do you do as a mother? Because we're creating that enabling environment for our children to be used as commodities, as goods. And we need to have this conversation. It's unfortunate that it took Karabo's life, but we need to dip in the conversation as women, look at the set of values that we instill on our children.
But is it not a difficult time now to be a young woman with social media? I mean, before, most people could not have that spirit of wanting something that does not belong to you if you didn't see it on social media. Because that is the challenge. I just think as a young girl, when I was a teenager, there were no social pressures. I knew nothing. What I had was enough.
The unfortunate reality as well is, yes, there are those social pressures. But what makes you the one who falls for the pressure? How are you different from the one who doesn't? Because it begins in the home. When I instill values that are saying that wait your turn as a child, that you will be able to afford or even earn your keep. And this is how you have to do it. But unfortunately, we create an environment where, young men are under so much pressure to provide, to give, because their fathers were under so much pressure as well, to provide, to give. And the unfortunate reality is many of them don't know how. And they get caught in, it's my good, it's my commodity.
Are we hearing men speak out enough against femicide?
Definitely not. Definitely not. The ones who are speaking out, I was listening in one of my talk shows, I was listening to people voicing out that poor guy, he's now going to go to prison.
Oh, my soul.
And there are fathers who believe that he did not get what he deserved. I mean, 32 years is more than life sentence, because in this country, life sentence is 25 years. And for me, do we have enough space in our prisons to have all these young men who make these decisions to abuse women? Do we have enough room for all of them?
But if we have his legal representatives saying perhaps for robbery there are people that are going out there killing each other, but what difference? I mean, you killed a woman.
For a society that even provides, I know that we live in a democratic state, everyone has rights, but we even provide legal representatives for such, acts. And for me, if there was a jail where we can throw them and they come back rehabilitated, that would be much better than just focusing on the sentence itself. I don't believe that sentencing and sentencing alone is enough.
And then as for remorse, many have been talking about Sandile having not shown remorse throughout this trial. But some still say, why do we expect everyone's emotions to read like a textbook? That perhaps he is remorseful, but he wouldn't necessarily express it. You wouldn't see him crying. What is your take, or what has been your observation?
I see a young man who's confused. He's stuck in that moment where he walked in and found her. Whatever happened between the two of them, and got stuck in that moment. He still have not realized, he's not mindful of what just happened, because he claims to have loved this woman. He claimed to have created an enabling environment for her to grow. He claimed to have cared for her. And therefore, he's stuck in feelings of what just happened. And how are we going to then ensure that we prevent more Sandiles? Because there are still Sandiles. I mean, I saw some of the tweets where people were saying, but this girl was known to have multiple partners. I mean, we take it there with social media. And that
on its own, even if it was the case, what about his agency? You still can make a choice as a young man to say, if she's got multiple partners, I need to move away.
I walk away, same as the young man in KZN, that I need to go and find a gun, throw her from third floor, whatever floor, and shoot her and make sure that she's dead. What is it that informs that decision-making? And for me, we need to create an opportunity where we're going to have conversations about family values, about, how we bring up our young men, and especially boys and girls, that what informs their narrative. Why do they make the certain decisions that they make in life? And in most cases, look at the teen pregnancy rate. You look at the blesser-blessee culture. You look at even the nature of how violent our words are on social media. We have a brewing pot that is about to just burst, and it's not going to be fun.
That means, Griselda, the challenge here is parenting. That either as young mothers, we now need to ensure that we don't raise Sandile Mantsoe. We don't raise children that will be overwhelmed by what they see from their peers. But it really needs some serious navigation, because our parents didn't have to deal with us and social media, because our children at 10, they already have access to the internet. The first site sometimes is a pornographic site. So it's also early sexualization of our young boys.
Oh, absolutely. So, the unfortunate reality, I know that I speak of many unfortunate realities, because indeed it is unfortunate. You look around, parents today have no time to parent. They leave parenting to the remote, to their cell phones, smartphones, and unfortunately you have to sit down and ensure that you instill values. Those things, you don't buy them from a retail store. Most of the things that I know, that I speak of, I learned from my grandparents, and we lack that. We even have your grandmas and not grandmothers anymore. And we need to go back to, us having environments where we say it takes a village to raise a child. That when Griselda does not have a father figure in her home, where are the uncles? Where are the uncles? Where are the brothers? Where are the male friends? We need to go back and be communal. Because right now, with all these skyscrapers, people are just so isolated. It's my business. I have nothing to do with what's happening in my neighbor's home. You have people who die for 3 solid days and no one finds them. And that for me says we need to go back and rewrite the script. This is not us. This is not how we do things as Africans. And I hope that with Africa Month, this is going to give us an opportunity to go back and look at those values, create conversations, dialogues, spaces where we talk about what's missing.
And you certainly would be that fitting person to perhaps champion these spaces where people are talking and we go back and return to ourselves. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And that's where we leave it. Let's quickly check in with our sports desk.